hard for me to stop at a few. But I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I thought, gee, you know, if I put the things down about Spence that I'd like to put down, it would take a book, and the book has already been written. It's a very good book, and you want to read it. And I thought, well, that isn't going to do. Then maybe I can talk about all of the experiences that we had here, because we came in as plebes. We went through 4 years of school here. We were in the same company, and we became very competitive on many, many things. And I think one tried to outdo the other, and usually Spence won. That was normal. He was bigger than I was, and I was older than he was, so I thought some of the things that should be equalized out, I had to do differently. But what Spence really did, and what I just wanted to mention, I had probably the greatest gift anyone could get, and I got it from Spence. The competition we had while we were competing for different things here at the academy, whether it be sports, academics even when I didn't, so we had to take that off the board. But we had a lot of other things that you have in a military academy. He would usually win. But I really think I won. And I think we both won. Because what I learned from Spence, the harder you work, the more you put into whatever you're doing, the more competitive you become. And I took that through everything that I had done from then on. I had a year and a half in college, and Spence's brother, Warren, was at the same college. But then we all ended up in that thing they called World War II. Spence and I both ended up commanding organizations, and we both had the trip from Normandy to, I'm not sure if he started Normandy, he came in a little later, but Normandy all the way through to the end of the war. But the gift that he gave me of being competitive, having a good, strong discipline, and I learned that if you took care of the people that were taking care of you, you could be successful. You at least had the opportunity. We got back, and we were talking a little bit earlier on here. Spence had worked for an executive search firm for a few years, and in those days, nobody knew what an executive search firm was. It was, you know, one of those kooky things that someone started up a service company to make some money. But we had a very small company, a family company, and I think we got up to about 100 men, and we probably got up to maybe doing $1 million worth of business. Oh, I was running out of time, and I had, you know, going 7 days a week. I need some help. I went down and saw Spence. Spence had a little office up in the First National Bank building. You may remember the old First National Bank building. The halls had the marble halfway, 3/4 of the way up. Spence had a girl part-time who was Spence. We sat down and we visited. I told him a problem. I said, hey, Spence, what am I going to do? He said, I've got an executive search firm. I'll find a man for you. He did. He found Chuck Mann. Chuck was buried a year ago, December 24th, the day before Christmas. The second man that we hired in our executive thing died that afternoon. But what I learned from Spence, and I learned from the competition, and I learned from everything we have done, whether it be in the service or in business. And these are the things that I picked up from Spence here: to be competitive, to work hard, and treat your people right. But they were still on our payroll when they died. And they all lived a pretty good life. And I think we both learned it. One of the greatest educations that I had, people sometimes say, where'd you go to college? I generally say, I went to college in Europe. And then they start naming the different colleges. But I did learn it. And I learned how right Spence was in the competition. If you don't mind, this is to be short, but let me tell you this. We had a fellow that was commanding a company. We used to call him Gramps. He was 28 years old. I was commanding a company, I was 20 years old. And we looked at anyone over 23 as being pretty doggone old. He was the most popular captain we had in our battalion. But he also had the highest AWOL rate and all the rest of the things out there. But he was really popular. They used to call me Little Napoleon because what I had learned at the academy is you need discipline, you need focus, and you have to move. We both got under fire, our first baptism of fire at the same time. He was off to our left flank, and I had to take care of the right flank. His troops broke and ran. We got across in our mission, didn't lose a man. I said, gee, you know, Spence and his competition, the way he fights, there is no such thing as being second. We had Colonel Franson here at the time as our PMS&T, and he'd say, you got to be second to none. That's why C Company was, Spence and I were both in. We were always the best company because we had the discipline. D Company, which was other days, they were great friends, but they were always goofing up. You'd think I was a D Company most of the time. And then B Company and A Company and the band were basically boarders. They lived too close together, and you had to live together. So, the greatest gift I think that I've ever had in my life was the competition and the comradeship that Spence and I had, because we each tried to outdo the other, not for the sake of outdoing each other as much as who was going to be there first, who was going to be number one on whatever we did. And I think that carried me through a good part of the year and a half I spent in college. And I think it carried Spence. He walked across France, Germany. I rode in a tank. I won that one. But I think that when I think of Spence, and we came down to St. Lawrence here a couple of years ago together, we started yakking about the academy. We started yakking about how we would compete against each other. And I don't think I'd be here today if it hadn't been for Spence and the gift that he gave me of teaching me that you got to work, you got to be honest, you got to take care of your people, but above all, you got to be competitive. Second place isn't winning. And that's the gift that he gave me.
This is probably one of the dumber things I've ever done in my life to try to follow that. But having said that, I just wanted to share a few thoughts. First of all, I was really, when we were asked to do this, was really honored to be included in such a special moment in the lives of Morgan Park Academy students and alumni. But I was also a bit overwhelmed at the prospect of speaking about a man who, based on his foundation of personal and professional values, really created an organization that has transformed an awful lot of lives, has developed the fortunes of an awful lot of important global companies. And it also has played a huge part in my own professional and personal development, for which I'll be eternally grateful to Spence and what he's done. I'm thrilled to be here in the company of his alma mater, as well as in the company of his classmate and close friend, Duchossois. And I appreciate the opportunity to say a couple of things about Spence. I was talking to a colleague of mine about coming to talk to you. We were discussing the topic of the award, which is values and integrity. I don't mean to talk about the good old days, and I'm sure Spence, like all of us, sort of came to school walking uphill in the snow both ways every day. But my colleague and I were talking and sort of had the sense that for a lot of people, values and integrity just don't have the same importance that they might have. Now, I do know that a lot of the most successful companies I know, values are the foundation of the company and what they have really built their companies on. And yet for others, there seems to be more of a luxury, especially when many companies are trying to steer their ship through the very challenging economic times. So we're thinking, why the difference? Why do some people believe so fervently in the power of commonly held and lived values, and others simply don't. Well, Spence weighed in on this issue very early in a pivotal time in the firm, and one of his remarks was, he said, it's true that the value system of much of our society is short-term, related to how much I could get for myself, but the hell with the other guy. And in general, against the traditional values that have been the foundation for what is one of the most phenomenal democratic developments in the world, which I'm sure you're just talking about our wonderful country. So when do values and integrity first take hold in us, and why is it that some stick and some just don't? Is it during school? Is it our very early eyes? Is it during times of serving one's country, as all of us at Spence and Dick and I have done? Is it when we first move away from home or take our first job? Well, all of these are certainly formative times, but for me personally, when I credit a great deal of my personal character to my parents, there was an awful lot of the values and integrity that was instilled in me when I was a student. Academic honesty, the spirit of independent thinking, mutual respect, and absolute integrity, I know shaped me, and I'm sure they shaped Spence as a student here at Morgan Park Academy, and later as an individual and as a leader. That independent thinking proved vitally important as Spence set out to establish his executive search firm. When I joined the firm 14 years ago, not even going back to when Spence started, executive search was not such an acceptable profession or important in the corporate world as accounting or management consulting or law. But ever the independent thinker, even back in 1956 when Spence founded the firm, he had a vision for the industry and his company, because we had the good sense to follow his lead and took what could have been a transactional business and instead made it about people and leadership and relationships. Our firm has been able to imbue everything we do with the core values that Spence himself first developed and cultivated here at Morgan Park Academy. Spence led with integrity. He believed that people are more important than profits, and that staying true to values and integrity keep leaders, their teams, their organizations, really all of us moving in the right direction. He once said, "We always wanted to be the best, not in volume, but in quality and service." And I'm proud to say that his philosophy remains part of our firm's fabric to this day. One of the most important and universal signs of a leader with integrity is his or her ability to create a vision that lasts and truly inspires others to see that sometimes intangible point off in the distance. It's obvious to all of us who have known Spence and had the privilege to have benefited from his vision and leadership, both of which are based at least in part on the solid foundation he received here, were enhanced by his serving as an officer in World War II, and led to his establishing a global firm, raising a family, and serving his community, that he had an immeasurable impact on global business and the lives of many, many people. In today's graduating class are undoubtedly future business leaders, influential politicians, pioneering scientists, selfless humanitarians, people with the power to truly make a difference. I'm certain that Spence would have been extremely proud of today's graduating class and the ongoing success of Morgan Park Academy in educating and nurturing tomorrow's leaders. He would have been equally proud, but also humbled to receive this special award and to witness the success generations of Morgan Park Academy graduates have followed him. Thank you.